Here's a number I want you to remember, just starting off the program today. 5. The number 5. What does the number 5 represent? Well, let me share something with you. I found this at the Christian Post yesterday. U.S. accepts only 5 Syrian Christian refugees since October. Now, that's not the Magic Valley accepting 5 Christian refugees, or Boise accepting 5 Christian refugees, or North Dakota accepting 5 Christian refugees. Nationally, the United States has admitted only 5 Syrian Christians since October 1st, when the administration began to implement President Obama's directive to accept 10,000 refugees. Christian refugees account for 1.6% of the total number of arrivals this year thus far, according to worldwide refugee admissions processing systems. 3 Syrian Catholics, 1 Syrian Christian, and 1 Orthodox Christian have arrived in the country since October 1st, according to Washington Free Beacon, which quoted data from WRAPS, whatever that would be, I guess, Refugee Assistance Program. Since January, 875 Syrians have arrived, and only 30 of them are Christian, the data shows. Of the total arrivals, 1,833, or 97.8%, are Muslims, it added. 8 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Just noted also over the weekend, there was a story. This has happened before. There was a boatload of refugees who were coming from North Africa. They were headed for Sicily or Italy, crossing the Mediterranean Sea, and once again, they threw all of the Christians overboard. There is a reason Christians don't come forward and say, we need to be resettled, we need somebody to take us, is because that just puts a price on their head. It marks them, and unfortunately, the results can often be very, very catastrophic. 8 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. So I did spend part of my weekend on this subject. I went to Boise on Saturday, drove to Boise, and I did not intend for the entire rally, but I was there for a good hour. The folks who are supportive of, they'd like to maintain this refugee resettlement program, decided to schedule a rally, and they were on the steps of the Capitol building. Well, they're there on a Saturday because most of them, I'm sure, are employed over at Boise State University, the professoriate, and then the students who are trying to brown nose. All were out there on the steps demanding, of course, that Governor Otter and our congressional delegation back down in its opposition to this program. Meanwhile, in about 36 hours, there was a counter-demonstration that was put together, and those people were on the other side of Jefferson Street for a time. The two groups actually commingled, but that was a little bit uncomfortable, I think, for many of the people who happened to be involved. I happened to be standing there listening to some of the organizers of the counter-demonstration, and I brought to you some of the. They had a bullhorn. Both sides had bullhorns, and you could hear. The newspaper story I saw in the Idaho Statesman yesterday tried to give you the impression everyone had a big group hug afterwards, and that everyone decided at the end that they had a lot in common and could share a lot. But I was walking through the other side of the street, the crowd supportive of the refugee program, when I heard someone refer to the people across the street as a-holes. Well, they used a slightly different version of that. And so there was a lot of what you'd call shouting going on back and forth across the street. But this is one of the organizers of the counter-demonstration, and he's bringing this up, saying that there are accusations some refugees are armed and that they have vanished.
How many of you know what an AT-4 is? For your veterans out there, military, do you guys know what an AT-4 is? I have a photo right here of a refugee in Twin Falls holding an AT-4 rocket launcher.
That's a live rocket
That's
launcher.
live. That's your refugee right here. Does he? Hey, here you go. Does this look like someone that's hurting?
No.
Are they? Oh, we got plenty for them. They're getting a whole bunch of these packets. Okay. We got photos right here. These are refugees in Boise and Twin Falls, fully armed, practicing, training, building their militaries.
And I happen to see some of these photographs. So one of them, there is looks like a fellow. He is atop. He's spread eagle, if you will, atop what looks to be a Ford Explorer or Expedition, and somewhere out in the desert in the snow, and doing a little target practice. And these are all people who apparently are members of a refugee community and have been training with firearms, and as they said, some of them have vanished. Now, the refugee supporters were jeering in the background as all of this was going on.
These are confirmed refugee resettlement people right here. Look at this.
That's a sniper
It's a sniper.
Top of a vehicle.
In Twin Falls, Idaho, do we want that here?
No!
Does he look like he's hurting? He needs help.
No! He
He's,
doesn't look hungry.
he's training. We don't want this here. This is the security we're talking about. It has nothing to do with hate, has nothing to do with racism. This has to do with security. I don't want people walking around these streets in Idaho with AT-4 rocket launchers.
In fact, I think that your gun control advocates out there probably would be shaking in their boots about this one as well. However, they seem to be giving these people a pass. Now, the counter-demonstrators also were saying that they're sick and tired of being labeled as bigots.
And they can't deny that because we got the photos with the names and they're through the resettlement program. They can't dispute that, can they?
No!
This is about safety of our citizens, our state, and our country. Period. Has nothing to do with anything else.
And then there was a moment where I think that these people were expressing their main concern in this situation.
No Paris in America! 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 Let's go! No Paris in America! No Paris in America! No Paris in America!
Now, I am told, and this apparently happened after I left, I returned home after about an hour attending this event, and I was told by one of the people who happened to be there, at least I saw a post about this, that over on the other side of the street, the people who are supportive of the refugee resettlement program started chanting Allah Akbar. I'm not there, I can't confirm it, but apparently people who were there said that indeed that started to take place as a bit of an effort to try and shout down the opposition from the other side of the street. It's 8:14. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We've got a lot coming up today, of course. Talk a little bit about this issue too as well with Randy Staples. He'll join us about 8:40 this morning. We have a grab bag of things we'll talk about with Randy this morning, but that's one of the topics. Coming up in a few minutes, some very nice folks are here on a happier note from Victory Home Restoration here in Twin Falls, talking about a Thanksgiving event that they have. They'll be joining us shortly. But I've got to tell you, my impressions of the people who were there standing across the street. Again, everyone is walking around with that Emma Lazarus poem, the one that's inscribed on the base of the Statue of Liberty. The American left seems to believe that a poem is national policy. I've said it before. They cannot wrap their arms around the fact that this is a very dangerous situation. As I happen to be standing there talking with some of the folks on the other side of the street, fellow explained to me he is a former newspaper man. He moved to Idaho in 1984 to cover the state legislature, and then he ended up becoming an editor of a newspaper, and he's no longer in that business, and he believes it's just gone off the rails. So he was chatting with me from one side of the street, but he pointed out that the people on the other side of the street holding the rally in support of refugee resettlement just can't get their arms around the idea that there might be people out there who might be slightly concerned about the future of this community and, well, throughout the state. That anybody out there would have a security concern somehow just baffles the other side. 8:15, Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Meanwhile, speaking on the Alan Combs radio show, I didn't know Alan Combs was still on the radio, but he's got a show apparently out of New York City, liberal talk radio. He had a guest on the other day by the name of Hassan Shibli. Shibli is a spokesman for an organization called Council of American Islamic Relations. And Shibli went on to say during the course of the conversation that lots of nasty things have been happening to Muslims because of this situation. And he said this, quote, "We have to stand united against Americans. Sorry, we have to stand united as Americans against our common enemy," unquote. He had a little bit of what you'd call a Freudian slip, saying that Americans were his enemies, and it didn't get any better during the course of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not as sexy, me coming on to condemn ISIS versus somebody shouting out in support of ISIS. I'd get all over the national news if I did that. Not that I ever would. They're horrific. They're disgusting. They're evil. But that being said, when Muslims are condemning them, it just doesn't get the attention that some crazy idiot extremist who doesn't speak for anybody gets when he goes and says stupid things. So the important point is this. People who are saying, where are the Muslims? Just Google it. Google Muslims condemn violence, Muslims condemn ISIS, you will find far more condemnations by Muslims against crimes done by other Muslims than you find in any other group. When white supremacists do a mass shooting in this country almost every day, you don't hear white Christian churches issuing condemnations.
Did you hear that? He just said when white supremacists do mass shootings every day in this country. And Alan Combs didn't say, whoa, wait a minute. This does not happen every day. Alan Combs didn't call him out on that. Gee, you wonder why, don't you? 22 degrees this morning. Going to be a chilly week as we go on. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. We have a caller with us. You're up next, and you're on the air. All right, somebody who didn't have a lot of patience. We'll try another line, and hopefully we'll find someone who's got a bit of that. It is a virtue, if you remember. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX, and you're up next. Hello?
Okay. It sounded like you were talking to somebody else. I'm sorry.
No, you're on the line, so you're the guy I'm talking to.
Okay. What drives me nuts about the pro-Islam people wanting these refugees to come here, no matter how much proof you show them that this is a dangerous thing, they scream and yell and jump up and down that we don't have any compassion, on and on and on. But what are they going to do in a year or 2 years or 5 years from now when there is a terrorist attack in Twin Falls, Idaho, or Boise, Idaho, and these college recipients with skulls full of mush are under attack? Are they going to sympathize with the terrorists? Are they going to realize they made a mistake? Are they going to be looking to people like us to protect them? I just don't understand it.
Well, I was going to say their safe space will be violated.
Yes, it will.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. We'll talk if we get a chance. There's a couple of pieces on that issue today as well. What's going on the campuses? It's now spread to about 100 campuses nationwide. Where these people at one campus, they were having one of these demonstrations, and they even told the journalists they couldn't cover it. When the journalists said why, the students argued that you wouldn't be on our side. And the journalist said, well, we're trying to be neutral. And they said, well, you can't be neutral any longer. 40% of American college students now think that the First Amendment needs to be scrapped, especially if people are using what is called hurtful speech. And 40%. These nimrods are going to be running this country in a few years. Do you realize how dangerous that situation? Totalitarian coming in here, perhaps a religious one, perhaps as a refugee, could have a great deal of fun with that type of support. We've got some folks coming up from Victory Home Restoration in just a moment, talking about Thanksgiving dinner. That's on the way in just a few seconds, right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com with Bill Colley this morning. By the way, the ladies from Victory Home Restoration are going to come back on Friday morning because, well, I won't spoil it ahead of time, but they have another big event coming up leading up to Christmas. So they'll be popping into the studio on Friday morning as well. We look forward to seeing them back here. 8:33, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. 23 on Thanksgiving Eve, that is Wednesday. Wednesday morning we will be joined in studio, I believe, by Russell Singleton. He's a physician assistant from Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls, located on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office. And we do this every week with either Jonathan or, well, we have a mix of people who come in. And what we do is we talk about a particular health issue. And we do it between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. They have a slogan, it's life's too short not to feel good. We're going to talk about carcinogens, and a lot of those are cancer-causing, and a lot of those occur naturally in the environment. That's our topic for this coming Wednesday. So if you have a question or comment for the medical professional in studio, feel free to give us a call this coming Wednesday. I was sharing with you in the last beginning of the program today some of the details of what's going on in not only Boise, but I think it's an international debate right now about what we're going to do about certain refugee issues. And, you always have to qualify this. You have to say, not all of these refugees are bad people. The overwhelming number of these refugees are really nice people. And my guess is even some of those Syrian refugees who've been showing up at the southern border are actually nice people who are just probably thinking, hey, this is a great way to get into the USA. They got here on their own. But you just don't know. You just don't know who could be introduced and who could be dangerous. It's 8:35. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 24. And if you'd like to give us a shout this morning, the number is 736-0300. That's 736-0300. We have a caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air.
Do you remember, or I don't know, some people might have read the fable about the scorpion and the turtle, or it's in some places it's the scorpion and the rabbit.
And there's one that I heard from Yasser Arafat about a crocodile and a frog riding on the crocodile's back.
Yeah, I guess you can probably replace, the one animal that swims, that carries the other animal across the river, but no matter which animals we choose to fill those roles, the story goes is that the animal asked, "Will you carry me across the river? Because I can't swim, I'll drown." And so the turtle says, "Sure," and hop on. So he says, "You won't sting me, will you?" He says that to the scorpion. The scorpion says, "No, I want to get across the river." So the river, the scorpion stings the rabbit or the turtle or whatever animal's carrying him across. And the rabbit goes, "We're both going to drown now, don't you? Why did you do that?" And the reply from the scorpion is, "Well, it just
Yeah, and your call broke up, but the answer being, I am a scorpion, or I am, in this case, a crocodile, whatever the story is. And unfortunately, that's what we happen to be dealing with right now, and you've got a lot of people out there who just cannot bring themselves to recognize just what a threat that potentially is. Even among Democrats, Dianne Feinstein was on CBS Face the Nation yesterday saying that the President of the United States greatly underestimated what's going on with ISIS. And, of course, she can do that. She's near the end of her political career. She's got no threats to her job, but she came right out and just was very blunt. But a woman by the name of Tulsi Gabbard, who is a veteran, Iraqi war veteran, and Gabbard is now serving in Congress from Hawaii, and she's also a member of the Democrat National Committee. She got kicked out of a debate a few weeks ago because she criticized Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She was saying that she said toppling Gaddafi and opposing Assad were bad ideas, and that basically the people behind that, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, took a baseball bat to a hornet's nest.
A lot of people say Assad is a bloodthirsty tyrant who's killed hundreds of thousands of his own people. How on earth could you want him to stay in power?
The same things were said about Saddam Hussein in Iraq. The same things were said about Gaddafi in Libya. Look at the state of these countries today. They have been overrun and are filled with chaos, and ISIS and Islamic extremist groups have only grown stronger in these countries and are terrorizing the people there.
She was speaking with Jake Tapper from CNN. She attended a memorial service in Paris that the president decided that he would not. It's 8:38. You're up next on Top Story.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we asked these people that support the refugee influx of people if they would be willing to house them in their house and monetarily take care of them. I wonder how many people would change their mind.
Let's see. Let's see a show of hands, right?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call, sir. Again, the people who make the most noise about this in support of the program will likely have the least amount of contact with the people they're talking about bringing over here. This Tulsi Gabbard, by the way, making no friends at the White House.
And you've proposed suspending the visa waiver program.
I've proposed, actually over a year ago, on September 11th of last year, I proposed a bill that would temporarily suspend the visa waiver program for these specific countries that have high numbers of foreign fighters, that we know they've got thousands of people who are traveling into Syria, fighting with ISIS, and then coming back in.
I can't imagine the French authorities are happy about your proposal.
They were not opposed to it, and they were open to it, and they understand.
There's a great column today, if you go to the website of the Washington Times, on the op-ed pages, and it's about this visa waiver program. If we get some time, we'll go into some depth about that a little later. But you've got the tourism industry in this country saying that we need to maintain this. It gives people 90 days to wander our country. And unfortunately wander our country without a lot of monitoring going on of what they're doing. Also, a writer at Washington Examiner today says, look, businessmen and tourists might be even a bigger threat. We don't screen them at all. 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. We'll be joined by Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing in just a couple of minutes.